Picture the most isolated place you can imagine. Now push further. Keep going. A tiny island in the South Atlantic Ocean, sitting roughly halfway between the southern tips of Africa and South America, holds a Guinness World Record that no one is lining up to compete for. It is the most isolated inhabited place on Earth. Its one and only settlement, a village so remote it has a name that sounds like a dare, sits more than 1,500 miles from the nearest inhabited island. The nearest continental land, South Africa, is over 1,600 miles away. South America is more than 2,000 miles in the other direction. There is no airport. There has never been an airport. To reach it, you take a boat from Cape Town, and that boat ride takes 6 days. And that's assuming the weather cooperates, which in the South Atlantic, it very often does not. The island is called Tristan da Cunha, and roughly 250 people call it home. Before we get to the extraordinary persistence of those 250 people, who they are, where they came from, and why they would choose to stay on a live volcano at the edge of the known world, let's just sit with the geography for a moment, because the numbers alone don't do it justice. Tristan da Cunha is almost perfectly round. It's about 7.5 miles across. A single volcanic peak, Queen Mary's Peak, rises nearly 6,800 feet straight out of the ocean, dominating everything. The summit holds a heart-shaped crater lake that freezes in winter. The island sits on the mid-Atlantic ridge, the tectonic boundary where the African and South American plates are slowly pulling apart beneath the ocean floor. This is not dormant geology. This is active, living geology. The volcano that built this island is the same volcano that, in living memory, forced every single person who lived here to flee for their lives. But we'll get to that. First, how does a place this remote end up with a permanent human population at all? The island was first sighted in 1506 by a Portuguese explorer named Tristan da Cunha, who, in a detail that seems almost too on the nose, saw it and sailed on. He never actually landed. He just named it after himself and kept moving, which, given what the South Atlantic looks like from a small 16th century vessel, is entirely understandable. For the next 3 centuries, Tristan da Cunha existed primarily as a hazard on nautical charts. Occasional ships stopped to resupply with water and fresh game. Sealers and whalers used the surrounding waters. Nobody stayed. Then Napoleon Bonaparte was defeated and exiled to St. Helena, another remote Atlantic island about 2,500 kilometers to the north. And suddenly, the British government became very interested in Tristan da Cunha. The logic was strategic. If France wanted to rescue their emperor, they would need a forward base in the South Atlantic. Tristan da Cunha was ideally positioned to be that base. So in August 1816, Britain formally annexed the island and installed a garrison of soldiers there. The mission was, at its core, to sit on a volcanic rock in the middle of nowhere so Napoleon couldn't use it. Napoleon died on St. Helena in 1821. The garrison was withdrawn in 1817. Problem solved, or so London thought. But one soldier refused to leave. Corporal William Glass was a Scottish artilleryman from Kelso, in the Scottish borders. Permission was granted, and with that quiet, almost casual bureaucratic decision, a permanent human settlement was born at the edge of the world. Over the following decades, Glass was joined by a trickle of others, sailors who decided to stay rather than continue to wherever they were going, men who were shipwrecked on the island's treacherous waters, a handful of women brought from St. Helena to provide wives for the settlers. The names that accumulated tell the whole story: Glass, Swain, Rogers, Green, Hagen, Repetto, Lavarello. 7 founding families. And those same 7 surnames still dominate Tristan da Cunha today, more than 200 years later. If you're born there, chances are you are descended from all of them. This is not a trivial observation, because Tristan da Cunha is not just geographically isolated. It is genetically isolated in a way that has made the island a subject of serious scientific study. With such a small founding population and very limited outside contact for the better part of 2 centuries, the island developed a gene pool unlike anywhere else on Earth. Researchers have documented unusual patterns in the islanders' blood types, and scientists have estimated the inbreeding coefficient, a technical measure of genetic relatedness, was notably elevated by the mid-20th century, comparable in scale to what you'd see in a moderately close family relationship. This isn't sensationalism. It's documented in peer-reviewed genetics literature. The islanders are not strangers to the research. They've cooperated with it. They are, in a very real sense, a living scientific experiment in what happens when a small human group is cut off from the rest of the species for generations. But isolation, it turns out, does not equal stagnation. Tristan da Cunha developed its own culture, its own economy, its own dialect of English, and it survived setbacks that would have ended most communities. The worst of those setbacks came on the 27th of November, 1885. By the 1880s, the island's position in the South Atlantic, once valuable as a waypoint for sailing ships, had become a liability. The opening of the Suez Canal in 1869 had rerouted global trade. The shift from sail to steam power meant ships no longer needed to stop and resupply the way they once had. Tristan da Cunha was slipping off the map of the world economy. Passing ships were increasingly rare. The island was struggling. On that November morning in 1885, a sailing bark called the West Riding appeared on the horizon, bound from Bristol to Sydney. For the islanders, a passing ship was a lifeline, a chance to trade homegrown goods for flour, provisions, things they couldn't produce themselves. Almost all of the island's able-bodied men climbed into a lifeboat and rowed out to make contact. The lifeboat was spotted sailing alongside the West Riding for some time. Then it vanished. 15 men were lost. The island's entire working-age male population gone in a single day. When a ship called at Tristan just weeks later, the crew found a community of 92 people, including 13 new widows and just 4 adult men, none of them younger than 69. The cause has never been definitively established. The sea conditions were rough. Various theories were advanced over the years: drowning, and in more sensational accounts, rumors that the men were taken to Australia against their will. None of it was ever proven. The lifeboat simply did not come back. And yet the community survived. Not easily, and not without outside help. The British government began sending an annual supply ship after the disaster. But the people who remained chose to remain. Given the chance to leave for Cape Town, only 10 people took the offer. This pattern, catastrophe, survival, refusal to leave, repeats itself throughout Tristan da Cunha's history in ways that start to feel almost like the island's defining character. During the First World War, the annual supply ship was stopped by the Admiralty. The island had no incoming mail, and by extension, almost no contact with the outside world, for what accounts suggest was close to a decade, until HMS Yarmouth arrived in July 1919. Think about that. A community of a few dozen people, already living in one of the most isolated places on the planet, cut off even from the minimal connection they had for nearly 10 years. They grew their own food, fished their own waters, and kept going. The Second World War brought a strange reversal. Suddenly, Tristan da Cunha's remoteness was an asset again. German U-boats had been spotted operating in South Atlantic waters. The British government, needing a covert listening post to track enemy movements, commissioned the island as a secret Royal Navy station, codenamed HMS Atlantic Isle. Soldiers arrived. Concrete buildings went up. And for the first time in the island's history, islanders were paid wages in actual cash money. Before that, the island's entire internal economy had operated on barter, with potatoes functioning as the primary unit of exchange. Islanders who helped build the naval station were paid in naval supplies: wood, paint, tea. The war brought electricity and modern infrastructure to a settlement that had been living essentially as it had in the 1820s. It was a compressed version of a century of modernization, delivered in a few years by a global catastrophe the islanders had nothing to do with. With the war's end came a crawfish canning factory, established in 1949, which gave the island its first steady commercial income. The rock lobster, the Tristan rock lobster, technically its own species, became the economic backbone it remains today, accounting for the vast majority of the island's export revenue, shipped to markets in Europe, North America, and Australia. And then, in the early morning hours of October 1961, the volcano woke up. It started in August of that year with earth tremors, small at first, then more frequent, then more violent. Landslides began on the slopes behind the settlement. On the 8th of October, a large tremor forced families to evacuate to the western side of the village overnight. The next morning, the ground between the settlement and the canning factory split open, and a fissure rose several feet from the earth in the space of hours. The decision was made to evacuate the entire island. The fishing boats Tristania and Francis Repetto were at hand, and they carried all 264 islanders out to Nightingale Island to shelter overnight. The following day, the 11th of October, a Dutch ship called the Cissedain picked them up and took them to Cape Town. From Cape Town, they boarded a ship to England, arriving in Southampton on the 3rd of November, 1961. In the space of less than a month, the entire population of the world's most remote inhabited island had been transplanted to Southampton. Reports from ships monitoring the eruption were not reassuring. By late October, the new volcanic cone rising from the island's eastern shore was nearly 400 feet tall. The lava field was consuming the beach. At night, the glow of the lava could reportedly be seen 20 miles out to sea. The British government, by most accounts, assumed the evacuation would be permanent. Here was a natural opportunity to finally consolidate this scattered, expensive, logistically complicated population into mainland society. The islanders were housed at a former RAF base near Southampton. Journalists descended to observe these people from the edge of the world, encountering television, traffic, supermarkets, central heating. What they observed was a community that did not want any of it. The Tristanians were polite. They were curious, and they were determined to go home. A Royal Society expedition returned to the island in early 1962 to assess the damage and determine whether resettlement was viable. 2 islanders, Adam Swain and Joe Glass, went on that expedition, and when they came back to England in April 1962, their report was unambiguous. The island was habitable. The settlement itself had been largely spared by the lava. The eruption had taken the canning factory and the beach, but the village stood. By August 1962, a 12-man resettlement survey party had left Southampton for Tristan. Officially, it was a survey. In practice, as the official record of the event notes, those men were never coming back to England. In 1963, the bulk of the population followed. Of the 264 people who had been evacuated, almost all returned. The British public, by contemporary accounts, found this baffling. These people had been brought to one of the world's most prosperous nations, given housing, given access to everything modernity had to offer, and they turned it down to go back to a live volcano in the middle of the ocean with a 6-day boat ride as its only connection to the rest of humanity. One observer at the time wrote that the English were almost affronted by it. The islanders, apparently, were not particularly interested in being affronted back. Today, Tristan da Cunha looks, from the outside, much as it has for decades. Edinburgh of the Seven Seas, the settlement's full name, given in honor of a royal visit in 1867, is still the only settlement. There is a school, a small hospital, a pub, a cafe, a post office that doubles as something of a collector's item destination. The same 7 surnames, the same 7 families, 200 years on. Access remains almost surreally difficult. 3 ships make the run from Cape Town regularly. The South African research vessel SA, Agulhas II, and 2 fishing vessels, the Edinburgh and the Lance. Together, they make fewer than a dozen voyages a year. The The fishing vessels can take about 12. All visits require prior approval from the island council. Visitors are the lowest priority on passenger manifests. If a seat is needed for a medical evacuation or a government official, your berth is gone. You could, theoretically, plan a trip a year in advance, fly to Cape Town, and still find yourself bumped off the ship. Immigration is even more restricted. You cannot move to Tristan da Cunha because you want to. You must have family connections already on the island. The community controls its own population in a way that almost no other place on Earth does. Not as a legal technicality, but as a lived practice. In 2020, when COVID-19 swept the planet, Tristan da Cunha's impossible remoteness became, briefly, its most visible asset. The Island Council enacted a visitor ban in March 2020. Because there is no airport, managing entry points was simple. While every other community on Earth was navigating lockdowns and transmission chains and overwhelmed hospitals, Edinburgh of the Seven Seas simply continued. 0 community cases. The island's one small medical facility, already operating at the absolute margin of what a community that size can sustain, was never tested. Also in 2020, the island made international news for a different reason. In November of that year, the government of Tristan da Cunha declared nearly 700,000 square kilometers of the surrounding ocean a fully protected marine protection zone. No fishing, no mining, no extractive activities. At a stroke, this tiny community of 250 people had created the largest no-take marine sanctuary in the Atlantic and the 4th largest in the world. An area almost 3 times the size of the United Kingdom, protected by a community that could fit inside a large theater. The numbers keep doing this. They keep forcing you to recalibrate what you think a place with 250 people can be, or matter, or accomplish. 250 people, and they hold a Guinness World Record. 250 people, and they created one of the largest protected marine areas on the planet. 250 people, all descended from 7 families. All living on the slope of an active volcano, all there by choice. Because when the volcano erupted and England offered them a permanent home, they said no. There are places on Earth that exist because of geography, or economics, or political necessity. And then there are places that exist purely because the people there decided they were not leaving. Tristan da Cunha is the latter kind. A record-holding, volcano-ringed, 6 days from anywhere expression of the human stubbornness to stay exactly where you are.